Hello, everyone, and welcome to January session of Ask Me Anything. My name is Rodiat, and I'm co-chair of SCG Women's Network Student Leaders Committee. And I'm happy to introduce today's guest, Dr. Eve Sprunt. Dr. Eve Sprunt is a prolific writer and an insightful consultant on diversity and inclusion issues, as well as the transition from hydrocarbons to cleaner forms of energy. She's passionate about mentoring younger professionals, especially members of dual career couples who are struggling to combine parenting and professionalism and those facing cross cultural challenges. She earned a Bachelor of Science from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, and she went on to become the first woman to receive a doctoral degree from Stanford University in Geophysics in 1977. She spent 35 years in the petroleum industry, 21 years for Mobil, and almost 14 years for Chevron. She was the 2006 president of the Society of Petroleum Engineers, and she received that society's highest award, the honorary membership. In 2013, she received the highest award given by the Society of Women Engineers, the Achievement Award. She founded the Society of Core Analysts in 1985, and she was the 2018 president of the American Geosciences Institute. Her over 120 editorial columns address workforce issues, industry trends, and cross-cultural challenges. In addition to authoring 23 patents and 28 technical publications, she is the author of A Guide to Dual Career Couples and Jairus Audrey, An Unlikely Love Story, and A Guide to Career Resilience with co-author with Maria Angela Capello, with whom she co-authored Mentoring and Sponsoring, Key to Success. We're very happy to have you on our January session today, ma'am. It's such an honor. I'm going to leave space for you to share anything you'd like to share
Well,
before we move to
thank you very much. It's my pleasure to be here today. I think the one thing with my bio I'd like to emphasize is that after you leave school, or at least for me, what it was is not so much what my degree said I was, but what I had to do to solve the important problems in front of me. And so I never got hung up over, this is what my discipline is. This is how far I'm supposed to go. I looked at the problem and said, what can I do to solve this problem? If I don't have the skills or can't rapidly acquire them very rapidly, who do I need to collaborate with? And so I had the pleasure to work with some fantastic people over the years in wonderful collaborations, including, of course, Maria Angela on the books. And I think one of the things that shocked and surprised me when we were working on career resilience was I had hoped that since she's 15 years younger than me, that she would not have encountered many of the issues I did. And so the universality of some of these obstacles to women really came home to me in that Maria Angela is younger than me, growing up in a very different culture in Venezuela, and yet she hit a number of the same bad behaviors.
Thank you for sharing that, ma'am. Yeah, I think Maria Angela is she's an inspiration to me, and she's a role model to a lot of young women out there and men
Yeah.
alike. So I'd like to start with this question. If you could keep it brief for us. Why did you choose to become a geoscientist? Was it were you told to become a geoscientist, or perhaps it was a decision by your family or friends? Could you briefly tell us about why you chose to become a geoscientist?
I was fascinated by the world around me, and I saw sciences as a way to understand what was shaping the natural world.
Thank you for the answer, ma'am. So I would also like to go to this question. Please, if you have any comments, please, or questions, please type into this comment section. I'll bring them up, and our is going to answer them. So I would like to ask you, what inspired you to write your books? I'd like to start with the guide for dual career couples.
Well, towards the end at Chevron, I thought since I was older, my husband was retired, that I could speak for the younger women because I wasn't advocating for myself. I was advocating for others and looking at some of their policies with regard to dual career couples and forcing members of a couple to declare to the company whose career took priority, and wanting kind of a full-time supportive spouse if you were going to climb the management ladder. I was appalled at what I thought was a very old-fashioned, out-of-date model. And I thought late in my career, I could speak up on the issue. And it was really surprising how strong the pushback was, that it was like I was challenging the whole company's mentality of that they wanted a full-time supportive spouse for the person who is going to be on the fast track. And so the first thing I did after retiring was to begin researching that topic, and actually did it ahead of time. So working through both SEG and SPE, surveying members along with Mariangela on dual career couple issues. And then Dearest Audrey, to me, was a book about dual career couples in the 1950s. And in the case of my aunt, it was an issue that there was no question about whose career took priority because, well, both the fact that she was doing English literature, which is a tough sell anyway, and then also the fact that in the 1950s, there were huge barriers against women's advancement. I mean, they were still there right into the, when I was, well, throughout my career, they've been gradually coming down. Every time when I see how significant some of these barriers are, I'm appalled that we haven't broken them down yet.
Thank you for the answer. Um, Please, if you have any question, please kindly type in the comment section. I'd like to go to the next question. How was your experience combining your professional life and your personal life? Because I've read so much about you, and how I was wild when I saw the amount of engagement that you did and the amount of leadership positions that you took. How were you able to undo your career and your professional life, personal life?
Well, it's challenging. I think what's particularly challenging is when travel comes up. And I think that perhaps the justification to me looking back now that I'm a grandmother, my kids have kids, is that there were certainly plenty of complaints, especially when I was gone for a long time. I think one of my son's most memorable comments was he said, "Mom, when you're gone, this house is like a spaceship. No new food enters." But he and his wife both work. They're both engineers. My daughter works full time. She's worked remotely for much of her career. But it's that despite, various complaints and things, that they didn't say they weren't going to do it that way. And so to me, that is the forgiveness at the end for having seized the permission to do it. So I think I would have gone nuts as a housewife. So I think you improvise and do what you need to do. And fortunately, we have a lot more tools now. When I was working, when my kids were little, you couldn't work out. A lot of work could not be done at the office because the computers were all wired to a mainframe. You didn't have Wi-Fi. You didn't have the internet available. So there's a lot more flexibility now for working from wherever. And I think that companies need to recognize that and accept it. And I think that hopefully will be one of the good things that came out of the pandemic.
Yes. I think the pandemic was a blessing. It was a combination of a blessing and something challenging. So I'd like to go to the next question. We have a question from Ugu Austin. He's asking that was it an easy task to seek job opportunities as a geophysicist?
Oh, an easy job to seek opportunities. I think that plays into it, which is the more narrowly you define yourself, the fewer opportunities you have. And if you look at people who climb into management, they open up what they do and move forward. So you have to be willing to say, what's important to me? What do I want to do? Do you want to be a technical expert? And that's probably easier in academia than it is in industry. And just because you have a PhD doesn't mean you have to do that your whole life. So I think it's what interests you, what drives you, and not getting hung up on what your job title is. As I said, I impersonated a petroleum engineer for many years, and just sort of got over it. So I was genuinely surprised, since I have no engineering degrees, to get the Society of Women Engineers top Lifetime Achievement Award. I thought, whoa. So I would say work on problems that are of interest to you. And that was my approach, was if I thought I could help solve a problem and it was an important problem, I was willing to do what it took to approach it. So you learn to teach yourself when you're doing cutting edge stuff. Nobody has the answers. You have to go out and find them.
Yes, I think you must have answered Austin. Yes, I think one of the things that builds passion is when you actually identify a problem. And when you're passionate about solving a problem, about making things better wherever you find yourself, it's gonna bring a motivation, especially if you're a resilient person. So I think identifying a problem and wanting to get to the end of the solution, at least trying to mitigate whatever it is or making things better, is a key point. So I'd like to ask you, what are the mistakes you have seen or that you think women make at work or in their personal life that prevents them from taking charge of their careers, or ways in which women hold themselves back from reaching their full potential?
I think it's underestimating themselves. That we look at other people and always think that they're far more competent, they know more than we do. But, when you're doing technical work, you're learning new things, and you have to be confident in yourself that when you see something you don't think is right, speaking up and stopping things. The biggest accomplishment of my career was, in terms of monetary impact, was quite early on. I was at that point for mobile responsible for core analysis measurements, which is kind of a boring type area. And I had a rush technical service project for an Indonesian field. And the first time I looked at the cores, I went, I can't run tests on these. They're full of drilling mud. And that turned out to be the answer to what people were trying to figure out. But my predecessors had said, I'm supposed to run measurements on these. I'll just write that they're full of drilling mud and continue testing. And so I basically called a stop work and ended up helping to prove up 2.2 trillion cubic feet of gas. So you have to trust yourself and trust your instincts and do what it takes to solve a problem.
Thank you for that, ma'am. Yes, I think you have to be resilient and you have to also believe in yourself and have a support like women in when you come to program like this. I believe you can get inspired and because not everyone has that what would I call it? Some people have this imposter syndrome in them. Not everybody has something that some people have things that will not allow them to be at the forefront or wanting to solve problem or speaking up, for instance. So I think even if you don't have it, it's something that you can cultivate and tell yourself okay, or being aware of the way you behave and what you do. So it is important. Thank you for that, ma'am.
Yeah, well, it's especially important then because I mean there were very, very few women in those days. And what I found is it was always very difficult to predict which men would be strong, supportive allies. You couldn't base that on ethnicity, religion, anything else in terms of who your friends were. And what I learned was, you learned who you could trust, who you couldn't trust. And if I couldn't trust somebody, I know one project where somebody was misusing my work. And I just looked at the situation, looked at the impact of what he was doing, decided it wasn't that horrendous, and moved away. So, I had early on one white American guy say to me, "Oh, you better hope you never have a Middle Eastern man as your boss." What he didn't know, and at that point, I didn't really realize, was that one of my most important sponsors was a guy from the Middle East. And over the years, some of my very best friends and supporters, and my best friend at work, were all Middle Eastern men. So you can't stereotype people. You have to judge them individually.
Thank you for that, ma'am. Thank you. We have a question from one of our audience. He said, what job opportunities would be available for a female geologist transitioning into a sustainable world?
I think it's really depends upon you. Not all geophysicists are identical. Some people say, or a geologist, you have a geologist there, but geoscientists is that geoscientists are different. You can train yourself, teach yourself what you need to know. And over a multi-decade career, technology evolves. You're having to constantly learn what you need to learn. So I would say find problems you enjoy solving. I always liked having a significant problem to work on, and then looked at it and said, can I teach myself what I need to solve this problem? Can I collaborate with somebody who can fill in the gaps I have? And so if I would look around and say, what problems excite you? And what do you need to learn to do it? Who do you want to work with? And just look at what's out there. Over the course of a long career, things are constantly evolving. The technical front is forever moving. So I would say look around for what's in your area, what's exciting to you, what's available, and go for it.
Thank you, ma'am. So that brings me to the question that what geoscience fields do you think are currently more relevant or offer more opportunities these days?
Oh, what geoscience things? Well, certainly, sustainability is a very hot topic now. There's all kinds of renewable stuff. You look at everything involved with electric vehicles and mining. There are many, many topics out there that people can address. And each of us have our own different niches. Geoscientists are not uniform. Some are highly mathematical, some aren't. I start as an experimentalist. Over our careers, we evolve. And so I think the thing is that if something is of interest to you, explore the opportunities. A lot is how proactive you are in finding things. There's no one right or wrong answer here. It's what do you see as your strengths? What do you enjoy doing? Where in the world do you want to work? And so I would say investigate, pay attention to what people are doing, look at what's happening, reach out to people. When you reach out and contact people, they're very often happy to communicate with you. So if they don't, what's the harm of that? So, if you see somebody doing something of interest to you, contact them, ask them about it.
Thank you for that, ma'am. And I think many geoscientists that I've met, even just online or maybe on webinars, when I reach out to them, they are very eager to listen to me and hear what my problem is, and they're really, really, really willing to help me. And even if they can't help me, they know someone who can. So I think it's really interesting, and it is very important that we join societies like the SCG, and also not just joining but getting involved and being proactive, like Dr. Eva said. So thank you for that, ma'am. So I
Yeah,
want to ask you.
being active is hugely important. It's where you work with people. When you work with people with professional society, they get to know you. And suddenly you have lots of friends and mentors and people who can support you. So being active in professional societies was a huge part of my career and played a huge role. People often say when they look at the uncertainty in job conditions, and there used to be a common expression, what color is your parachute? Well, I always looked at it that my parachute was my activity in professional societies, because when you work with people in professional societies, they know what you can do. And so when things go bad, you need those contacts outside your place of employment. And if you are active in professional societies, there are many people in a wide range of activities who know your work. You don't have to sell yourself. They already know you.
Thank you for thank you for adding that, ma'am. I'd like to ask that. Do you recall any instances in which you felt disrespected? Working in a male-dominated environment, and and when you were doing geophysics, I don't think the number of women we have now would have been more than then when you were in the industry and when you started your career. So do you recall? Can you share with us any instance that you
Oh,
felt you were disrespected, and how did you respond to the circumstance?
oh, endless ones. I think perhaps the most damaging one was relatively early in my career. My boss's boss told me, you can't have a younger woman supervising an older man. So talk about, putting a cap on your advancement. Although what was interesting there was that it seemed to be in terms of a fellow professional, whereas I was allowed to supervise older technicians. I just wasn't allowed to supervise older men. But when you look at it, I did not appreciate, how cumulative careers are. And so every time you hit a barrier like that, it holds you back somewhat. And the clock is constantly ticking. So when you hit one of those barriers, a lot of those people, there's no changing them. And if you can figure out a way to get away from them and get around them, that's better than trying to change them. So, the barriers keep moving, but there are a lot of Neanderthals, shall I say, out there who are upset that, the status quo, when they were on top is no longer there. You're not going to change them. You just have, you're better off finding a way to distance yourself and keep them from having a negative impact on you.
Thank you for sharing that, ma'am. So I like to ask this question. It's kind of related to what I've asked before. What is the most significant barrier in your career, and how did you overcome it?
What was the most significant one?
Barrier.
Oh, the most significant barrier. Well, I think certainly gender was in those days, but I was very fortunate when I look at the laws and everything else that they were just changing. Actually, the very first time I was looking for a summer job when I was finishing high school, they still had the one ads in the newspapers split between male and female. And you can imagine what was available to women versus men. And my father got me a summer job through a friend of his. But I think that the barriers are constantly changing, and that the thing to do is to figure out ways around them one way or another, whether it's who you partner with. And I think the other important thing that I did very early on is that there's always the issue of getting credit for your work. And I documented, I wrote reports on everything. And I got very creative. When you're working for a company, often it's not in the company's best interest for you to publish, but you can get creative and figure out reasons and ways to make it in the company's business to publish. So you need to create a track record for yourself that's open to the public. So when you want to leave your employment, you have credentials that people can recognize. So collaborating on projects through professional societies is a great way to do that. Working in professional societies, people know you, they know your work ethic. But, it's always looking over your shoulder and saying, how do I build a safety net for myself?
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that, ma'am. So about diving into the question, how did you find the experience of achieving leadership positions? Because I read so much about you. You are involved. You even founded the Society of Co-Analysts, and it's very interesting. How did you find that experience, and what advice do you have for younger professionals who want to follow in your footsteps?
I think if you see an important problem that's of significant value to someone, and you know who that someone is, and it's important, you go for it and look for allies and share credit. People who try to keep all the credit to themselves are miserable to work with. And when you are willing to share credit with everyone and move on, there's no end to what you can accomplish, because most of life is collaborations. We don't have all the answers. We all bring different pieces to the puzzle. And so I would learn both at work and in professional societies who were good collaborators and work with them over the years.
Thank you for that, ma'am. Yes, I think it's again, like we've said before, it is very important that you join professional societies and you are active and you make use of the opportunities that comes with joining them.
Yeah, when
Um,
you're active, that's the thing. Being passive, just going and sitting at a meeting, is not taking advantage of being in a professional society. It's when you step up and do the work that you get to know other people and make those vital connections and acquire new skills.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing, adding that. We have a question for Aka Kaka. He's asking, do you think that work environment in geoscience is already female friendly?
Everything's local. in some places it could be extremely friendly, dominated by women, and in other little niches not. Much depends upon the people around you, your individual supervisors, and so I'm sure there are some places that are wonderfully female friendly and others that are terrible. And the thing to do is, if you're in a bad situation, figure out how to get into a better one. You're not going to change some of the, dinosaurs.
Thank you for sharing that, ma'am. Okay, I like to ask you also that because I've read so much about you and I don't really know about the world there, and I think maybe it's a local thing also. I don't know if it is happening also in the US. So, as a close relative or possibly a coworker ever accused you of like taking on too much, doing too much, why are you doing this? You're a woman. You understand? So, how have you dealt with that? Have you ever find yourself in such situation?
I ignored them. I mean, if my husband was willing to put up with it, he's the one that, I had to, kind of work it out with. And he's been very supportive, that I work long hours and at home and at work. So I think it's, you know, keeping your family, to me, the issue of hours and how long you work is a family issue. Uh, what outsiders think about it is none of their business.
Thank you very much. And I think you're gonna have less issue if you choose the right partner, because if you don't choose the right partner, then everything is gonna be because I don't know. I think women do have that issue. If you don't find the right partner, you're gonna have problems, and they're gonna see
Yeah.
you as doing too much. All right, thank you, ma'am. All right, I also want to ask you, like, what are the hard and soft skills you think geoscientists should work on developing?
Again, different geoscientists are not all alike. They have different specialties, different interests, and they're in different parts of the world. And so I think, and some people are highly mathematical, others aren't, some are more intuitive, some want to work with people. So I think it's finding a problem or problems, because things evolve with time, that is of interest to you, and uh, following that. There's no one right solution.
Thank you for that, ma'am. I also also like to ask you, if you were to advise yourself when you were younger, what would that advice have been?
To avoid more conflicts, that sometimes, I learned very much to walk away and just avoid the conflict. Uh, I think the correct thing I did do is becoming very active in professional societies. And so if you're blocked in one way, find another outlet for your passions, that don't waste your time beating your head against a brick wall. When I had bad bosses, uh, I made some drastic shifts in technical course to get away from them. And even with a wild array of assignments, it's amazing, seemingly unrelated things all combine to make a whole. And so if you're unhappy doing what you're doing, find a way out. And you may have to be very creative to do it. Probably will have to take some serious risks. But when you stretch yourself and get out of your comfort zone, you go on a very sharp learning curve. And during that sharp learning curve, there are often people who will step forward and coach you when to get away from a boss who I thought had me on his hit list. I switched to business development. I thought I knew what I was getting into. I hadn't the slightest clue, as it turned out. But I ended up learning how to do all the economics and finding along the way that the engineers who were doing the economics didn't for very complex international fiscal systems. And so I brought in training for us all. And so look around, don't be afraid to take on new challenges. If getting away from a problem involves stepping well out of your safety zone and learning new stuff, that can be a real breakthrough and create opportunities in the future. You know, the ability to reinvent yourself is extremely valuable.
Thank you for that, ma'am. I think it's very, very good to be able to reinvent yourself and not, you have to embrace challenge. Like you have to um, say, okay, yes, you are here now. And what are you here to teach me? What am I going to learn? And that's the way I see challenges whenever I'm faced with one. And I know that I have a network of people, of mentors that I can reach out to that are always willing to help me. And I think it's really it's really interesting when you're faced with a problem, whether it's at work or if it's a technical problem. I think it's gonna be an interesting journey. For
Yep.
me, solving problem is an interesting journey because I'm like I want to see. I really enjoy challenges, in short, and I'm not afraid to face them and develop myself. All
Yeah,
right,
I'd be
thank you for
very
that.
bored doing the same thing for an entire career.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. All right. So I don't know. It's not included in the question I sent, but I'd like to ask you: have you ever had like an is it honeybee in your book? Because I read something about honeybee, like a woman. Have
Oh,
you
a
ever met
queen bee. Oh,
queen
yeah.
bee?
Oh,
Queen bee.
yes. I had a horrendous female. I've encountered at least two very serious ones. One was my boss for quite a long time at Mobile, and I made a major career shift to get away from her. And then the other was very late in my career at Chevron. And ironically, especially the Chevron one, liked to talk about women's issues, but she was women's worst enemy. And it was all about her. And I had thought since I was near the end of my career, I was advocating for others, I could do it. Boy, when I started raising questions and issues, boy, did she get angry. And so there, some people you just have to get away from. You know, you have to pick your battles, as they say. And queen bees, you're not going to change them.
Thank you for that, ma'am. If you're wondering what a queen bee is, you need to read ma'am, Dr. Eve book, Mentoring and Sponsoring. Ma'am, can you show us the book?
Well, actually, it's the Guide to Career Resilience is where we talk a lot about
Oh,
it. And
yes, yes,
Maria
yes, yes.
Angela had a friend who went from being a geoscientist to keeping bees in Germany. And so, and it was interesting because one and I showed her, you know, the pictures of the bees. She goes, "Oh, having bees on the cover may stop people from buying the book. Some people wouldn't even want to touch a picture of a bee." And I thought, oh, I guess you're a person who doesn't want to touch a picture of a bee because I never heard of that before. So I think the thing about this book is Maria Angela and I share a lot of our very personal stories about problems we encountered. And there are a number of very wonderful women and very extremely accomplished women who shared devastating experiences they encountered early on. So, when you look at someone who's successful, you often think, oh, they had it easy. And when you talk to them, you find it's anything but. So you need to be prepared to hit obstacles. The world's full of difficult people, and you need to develop tactics and approaches both to deal with them and to maintain your morale. You need friends, you need confidants, and they don't necessarily have to be women. For years, when I was working at Mobile and going through some of the toughest stuff, my best friend and confidant was a Syrian man, and is still a very close friend. So, don't stereotype people just as you don't want them to stereotype you.
Yes, thank you, ma'am. The book is very interesting for me. I really recommend that everyone, every woman and men, read the
Yeah.
book. Yes, I was really inspired by reading the book, and I just felt among. I felt among, and I'm so proud to be a geoscientist and a woman. All right, I'd like to ask you that: is there something else you like to share with us to inspire minorities looking forward to a career in geoscience, especially females?
I think it's, don't think you have to do just one thing in a career, that you can reinvent yourself many, many times and follow things that are of interest to you that you think have impact. So it's, some people follow things that are interesting to them that don't, but if you follow things that have a major impact one way or another, it's more of a career builder. And to focus on your own strengths. Everyone's different. The world's constantly changing. Technology is evolving so fast. What somebody says is, here's this hot area, you've got to go into it. Well, maybe it'll be hot for 3 or 4 years, and then it's not. So, there's so many unpredictable things out there. You just have to be resilient one way or another. And I think that's what we're really looking at. And then you also have to expect that they're good people and they're bad people. And you often can't tell who's going to be supportive and who's not until, they become a problem. But, give everyone a fair shot. And then when you see bad signs, distance yourself.
Thank you for sharing that, ma'am. I also like to ask you that could you share some of your success habits with us?
Oh, success habits.
Yes.
I guess I'm a workaholic, but I think when you're doing stuff you enjoy, you work on it. So I think the thing is know which of your skills you enjoy using, because if you are doing something that's fun and intellectually challenging and satisfying to you, time flies and you're willing to pour countless hours into it. Whereas other types of work, if you don't like it, it's pure drudgery. And so the thing is to try to find that intersection between what you like and what's of value and rewarded by your employer, and then you have a sweet spot.
Thank you for sharing that, ma'am. We have a question for Divine Favor, and I think you've answered that earlier on. She said,
I think one of the most important skills there is being able to teach yourself, because when you look at it, the fraction of your career that you spend of your life you spend in formal training is very short. And no matter how good the school, how well you did, very rapidly knowledge becomes obsolete. And so you have to be able to continue teaching yourself and reinventing yourself. So I'd say the most important thing is that the ability to retrain yourself and to reinvent yourself.
Thank you for sharing that, ma'am. Is there anything else you'd like to leave us with, or you'd like to share?
Oh, well, I think you can have an incredibly good time doing it, because I mean, I've gotten to do so many more things over my life than I never dreamed I could do, and met wonderful people and had a fabulous time. And we've got so many wonderful communication tools now where you can collaborate with people all around the world. When Maria Angela and I wrote our first book, she was in Kuwait and I was in California. And so, and the two of us, we're good friends, but we've spent very little time face to face. And so you have access to the whole world now, and you can just shape it as you want and reach out. Volunteering and getting engaged, it's when you get engaged with professional societies is when they really pay off. Just going and sitting through talks or attending the annual meeting and hanging out with the people you know is not the benefit. The benefit is being engaged, learning, stretching yourself, and making contacts. And you absolutely never can predict which the most important contacts are. And as I said, many of the most important, my important mentors and sponsors have been Middle Eastern men.
Thank you for sharing that, ma'am. Thank you so much. I'm very sure that everybody enjoyed this session, and the people that are still coming to watch this that are not on the live event will enjoy. And you can reach out. Is it okay if I tell them to reach out to you on LinkedIn?
Yeah.
So if you have any question or comments, you can reach out to Dr. Eve Sprunt on LinkedIn, just as the name is spelled here. Eve Sprunt, she's on LinkedIn. You can reach out to her. Thank you so much, ma'am. It has been such an interesting session with you. And I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.